I pay for my daughter's college, but make my son work to afford his own. My 21-year-old son works closing shifts at a restaurant and weekends at a retail store to scrape together tuition for community college, while his 19-year-old sister gets her state university bills paid in full by me. To everyone looking from the outside, including my own family, I'm the textbook definition of a terrible playing favorites parent. My son feels it too, and it's killing both of us. The accusation started small. My sister would make comments about treating your kids equally when my daughter mentioned her spring break plans while my son talked about picking up extra shifts. My ex-husband, their father, called me one evening specifically to tell me I was damaging our son's self-worth. But the worst part was watching my son's face every time money came up in conversation, seeing him calculate in his head whether he could afford textbooks or if he'd have to wait another semester for that class he needed. He'd come home exhausted from double shifts, backpack slung over his shoulder, grabbing whatever leftovers were in the fridge before disappearing to his room to do homework until 2 a.m. Meanwhile, his sister would be planning sorority events and complaining about her difficult schedule of 3 classes. The contrast was stark, and I could see it eating away at him. He started making bitter comments. Must be nice to have your biggest worry be what outfit to wear to parties. And I'd just sit there taking it, because what else could I do? The tension reached a boiling point last month when he came home and announced his grades were slipping because he couldn't keep up with work and school. I might have to drop out for a semester, he said, staring at his feet. I can't do both anymore. That's when my family really came for me. My mother called me crying, begging me to just help the boy. My sister threatened to pay his tuition herself just to show him what real family support looks like. Even my daughter started asking uncomfortable questions about why I treated them so differently, but they didn't know what I knew. They hadn't spent the last 2 years getting calls from banks about overdraft fees, hadn't found the betting apps hidden on his phone, hadn't watched $500 disappear from his checking account in a single afternoon on college basketball games. They didn't know about the 3 different credit cards he'd maxed out on DraftKings and FanDuel, or the loan shark situation I'd had to quietly resolve when he was 19. Last Tuesday, he finally exploded. He stormed into my room while I was paying bills. Ironically, while I was writing the check for his sister's spring semester. I can't take this anymore, he said, his voice shaking. Just tell me why you hate me. Tell me what I did wrong. Tell me why she gets everything handed to her while I'm breaking my back just to stay in school. The pain in his eyes was unbearable, but I'd held this secret for so long that the words felt stuck in my throat. You want to know the truth? I finally said, my hands trembling as I set down the pen. I've paid $18,000 in gambling debts for you in the last 2 years while you've been calling me unfair. The silence in that room was deafening. His face went completely white, and I watched 21 years of confusion suddenly make sense to him. I told him about every phone call from creditors, every time I'd had to drain my savings to cover what he'd lost, every sleepless night I'd spent wondering if giving him tuition money would just fuel the addiction that was already destroying him. The work requirement wasn't punishment. It was the only thing keeping him tethered to reality while I desperately tried to protect him from himself. He sank into my desk chair and put his head in his hands, and for the first time in 2 years, my son cried in front of me, not from anger or frustration, but from the crushing weight of understanding that every dollar I'd denied him was a dollar I'd already spent saving him from consequences that could have destroyed his entire future. I wasn't the villain in his story. I was just a parent drowning in an impossible situation, choosing to let him think I didn't care rather than enable the addiction that had already cost us both so much.